Flour dusted the air like snow, and Hannah Pierce had her hands buried in dough when the bell above the door rang for the 9th time that morning. She did not look up right away. She had learned, in 3 years behind the counter at Amoretti's bakery, that the first customer of a rush rarely needed her attention as much as the dough did. But when the voice that followed the bell was not a customer's voice, was instead the sharp, carrying tone of her manager calling her name across a full shop, she looked up fast enough to feel her neck crack. "Hannah, front, now!" She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped out from behind the display case, and the shop was fuller than she had realized. A dozen regulars lined up for their Saturday bread, and standing among them, arms crossed, was Deb Kowalski, the manager who had never once used Hannah's name without irritation folded somewhere into it. "You closed out register 2 wrong 3 days running," Deb said, loud enough that the woman buying croissants 2 feet away stopped pretending not to listen. "I told you twice how to run the till. I am not paying you to guess." "I can fix it," Hannah said, already reaching for the drawer, already doing the math in her head the way she always did, quiet and fast and unseen. "It was an $11 discrepancy. I found it yesterday. I was going to show you the corrected sheet this afternoon." "You were going to show me." Deb's laugh had no humor in it. "You've been a problem since the day I hired you. Quiet as a mouse and twice as useless. You're done. Clock out. Don't bother coming back for a schedule." The shop went silent in the particular way a room goes silent when it realizes it is witnessing something it was not supposed to see. Hannah felt her face go hot, felt every eye in that bakery find her at once, and reached up to untie her apron with hands that had gone unsteady in a way they never did over dough or an oven timer. She was folding the apron into a neat square, because some part of her still cared about doing even this correctly, when the bell above the door rang a 10th time. The man who walked in wore a charcoal overcoat that fit him the way expensive things fit people who never had to think about money, and he stopped just inside the doorway the way a man stops when he is taking the measure of a room before he decides whether to stay in it. Hannah did not know him. She would have remembered him. He had the kind of stillness that made everyone else's movement look sloppy by comparison. Dark hair combed back from a face that gave away nothing, and a signet ring on his right hand that caught the light when he lifted it to loosen his coat at the collar. Deb saw him too, and her whole posture changed, straightened, the practiced brightness of a woman who had spent years learning which customers mattered enough to smile at. "Welcome to Amoretti's," Deb said. "What can I get started for you today?" The man did not look at Deb. His eyes had already found Hannah, standing behind the counter with her apron folded in her hands like an offering she did not know what to do with, and something in his expression sharpened, focused, the particular attention of a man recalculating a plan in real time. "I am looking for Hannah Pierce," he said. His voice was low, even, unhurried in a way that made the whole bakery feel like it had slowed down to match him. "I was told she makes the sfogliatelle here. I have a standing order to place, a large one." Deb's mouth opened and closed once, the sound of a woman watching her own decision collapse in front of a dozen witnesses. Deb started. "She actually we were just discussing her schedule." "Were you?" The man's eyes did not leave Hannah's face. "Because I called ahead this morning and confirmed she would be working today. I do not enjoy being told information that has since become inconvenient." He took one step further into the shop, and Hannah watched every customer near him instinctively shift their weight away, the way people shift away from weather that is about to turn. "Miss Pierce, my name is Vincent Marchetti. I would like 5 minutes of your time, if your employer has not made other plans for your afternoon." Hannah's heart was doing something complicated in her chest, half humiliation and half a confusion so sharp it nearly overrode the humiliation entirely. She had never met this man. She was certain of that the way she was certain of very few things in that moment, and yet he stood in the middle of her worst public moment in 3 years and said her name like he had been saying it for a long time already. "I don't understand," she said, because it was the only honest thing available to her. "You made a wedding cake in October," Vincent said, "for a woman named Teresa Alvino. 3 tiers, dark chocolate with a raspberry filling nobody else in this city can get right. I was at that wedding. I have thought about that cake more times than I would like to admit to a stranger in a bakery." Something flickered at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, gone before it fully arrived. "I asked around. Everyone told me the same name. Hannah Pierce made that cake. I came to hire her directly, for an event of considerably more importance than a wedding. It seems I have arrived at an interesting time." Deb's face had gone the color of old paper, the particular pale of someone realizing, in real time, exactly how badly they had misjudged a situation. "Mr. Marchetti, if I had known, I would never have. That is, Hannah is a valued member of our team, and I think there's been some confusion about her schedule." "There is no confusion," Vincent said, and his voice did not rise even a fraction, which somehow made the words land harder than shouting would have. "I heard every word you said to her. I do not require an explanation. I require an answer from Miss Pierce, not from you." Hannah stood there with her apron still folded in her hands, feeling the entire shop's attention pressing against her like heat, and understood that whatever was happening had already moved past the version of her afternoon she had been dreading 5 minutes ago, and into something else entirely, something she had no map for. "I don't have a job anymore," she said slowly, testing the words. "So I suppose my afternoon is open." "Good." Vincent's gaze moved once, briefly, to Deb, a look that carried no threat in its shape and every threat in its weight. "I would ask that you reconsider how you speak to your employees in front of customers in the future. I doubt I am the only one in this shop today who noticed." He turned back to Hannah before Deb could answer, before the moment could curdle into something that required a response. "Is there somewhere we can speak?" "Not here. Somewhere quieter." Hannah untied nothing further, because there was nothing left to untie, and walked around the counter with a steadiness she did not entirely feel, aware of every customer's eyes tracking the movement, aware that she was walking out of that bakery for the last time in a way she had not planned for and could not fully process yet. Outside, the cold hit her first, sharper than she expected after the bakery's ovens, and then the second thing hit her, which was the black car idling at the curb with a driver who stepped out to open the rear door the moment Vincent approached it. She stopped walking. "I'm not getting in a car with a stranger," she said, and heard how small her voice sounded against the width of the street, and hated that it sounded small, and said it again with more spine behind it. "I don't care what cake you liked. I don't know you." Something in Vincent's expression shifted, and for the first time since he had walked into the bakery, it looked less like calculation and more like genuine consideration. A man recalibrating his approach to account for a variable he had not expected. "That is fair," he said. "There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from here. We can walk. I will tell you exactly what I want from you before you decide anything." He gestured, not toward the car, but down the street, and fell into step beside her without waiting for her agreement, which she noticed and chose not to comment on, because it told her something about him that his words had not. The coffee shop was small and mostly empty, the kind of place that survived on regulars rather than foot traffic, and Vincent chose a table in the back corner without being asked, the kind of instinctive choice a man makes when he has spent a lifetime deciding which seat in a room lets him see the door. Hannah sat across from him, still faintly dusted with flour at the wrists, and waited. "I own a restaurant," Vincent said, Once 2 coffees had arrived and the barista had retreated out of earshot. Several, actually, but the one that matters for this conversation is called Marchetti's on Mulberry Street. Every year I host a dinner there for people whose good opinion of my family matters a great deal to me. This year, the dinner is in 9 days. My pastry chef quit 2 weeks ago with no notice, and everything I have tasted since has been an insult to the people I am feeding. He said this the way another man might describe a business problem. Flat, efficient, no wasted emotion. I want you to make dessert for that dinner. I am prepared to pay you considerably more than that bakery paid you in a month for a single night's work. That's insane, Hannah said before she could stop herself. You don't hire someone off the street because you liked a cake at a wedding. I do not do many things the way other people do them, Vincent said, and something in the flatness of the sentence told her it was not boasting, only fact. I looked into your work before I came today. The wedding cake was not luck. Your work has a consistency to it that tells me you understand your craft at a level most people in this city do not bother reaching for. I do not have time to audition 6 pastry chefs this week. I have already decided you are the right choice. I am simply asking whether you agree. Hannah studied him across the small table, flour still under her fingernails, and felt the strange vertigo of a day that had started with her worst professional humiliation and was somehow now offering her something that felt, despite every instinct telling her to be suspicious, like an opportunity too large to be real. What kind of restaurant needs a dinner this important? She said carefully. That a woman gets fired in public and hired within the hour by the man walking past. Something crossed Vincent's face, brief and controlled, a door opening a crack and closing again before she could see clearly through it. My family has been in this city a long time, he said. The dinner is a tradition that matters to people who do not forgive being disappointed easily. I would rather you understood the stakes are real than discover it halfway through preparation and decide to walk away. And if I say no? Then I thank you for your time and find someone else, and you go back to being unemployed by a woman who did not deserve to have you working for her in the first place. He said it without pressure, without any attempt to manufacture urgency, and somehow that lack of pressure made the offer feel more serious rather than less. I am not in the business of forcing people into things, Miss Pierce. I am in the business of finding people capable of something rare and asking them plainly. She thought about her apartment, about the rent due in 11 days, about the particular exhaustion of being underestimated by people who had never once tasted the difference between competence and mediocrity, and heard herself say, "What would you need from me, exactly?" A menu. 4 courses of dessert, refined enough to impress people who have eaten at the best tables in this city and are difficult to impress on principle. He watched her with an attention that felt entirely different from Deb's dismissiveness, entirely different from the low hum of customers who never really looked at her, an attention that made her feel, for the first time in longer than she wanted to admit, genuinely seen. You would work out of my restaurant's kitchen for the week leading up to the dinner. I will pay you for the full week, regardless of what happens on the night itself. If it does not work, you will still be paid, and you will still have something to put on a resume that means considerably more than a bakery on a residential block. You've thought about this. I think about everything, Vincent said, and there was nothing warm in the way he said it, only a plain and slightly unsettling honesty. It is the only reason I have survived as long as I have in the business I am in. She started at Marchetti's the following morning, and the kitchen was unlike anything she had worked in before, gleaming steel and a walk-in refrigerator larger than her apartment, a staff that moved around each other with a precision that suggested years of practice rather than mere professionalism. Vincent was not there when she arrived, and she told herself the small drop of disappointment she felt at that fact meant nothing at all. He appeared instead in the early afternoon, without announcement, the way she was beginning to understand he did most things, and stood in the doorway of the kitchen, watching her work a chocolate tempering machine with an attention that made the back of her neck warm despite the industrial air conditioning. "You are frowning at the chocolate," he observed. "It's seizing," Hannah said, not looking up. "Someone let water get into the batch before I got here. I have to start over." "Is that a problem I created?" "It's a problem your kitchen created before I arrived," she said, and heard herself say it with more confidence than she had spoken with all week, the particular confidence of someone standing on ground they understood completely. "I'll have it fixed in 20 minutes. You didn't need to check on me." "I did not come to check on you," Vincent said, though something in his tone suggested he was not entirely certain that was true. "I came because Marcus, my head of security, tells me a car has been parked across the street from this restaurant for 3 days that does not belong to anyone in this neighborhood. I wanted to walk the kitchen myself before the dinner. It is unrelated to you." Hannah's hands stilled over the ruined chocolate. "Is that dangerous? For me, I mean, working here?" Vincent was quiet for a moment, and she watched him decide, visibly, how much of the truth to give her, a calculation she was beginning to recognize as something he did constantly, with everyone, a habit worn smooth by long practice. "There are people who do not like my family," he said finally. "There always have been. I do not believe it concerns you directly, but I would rather you know that this kitchen is watched more carefully than most, and if anything ever feels wrong to you here, you tell me immediately. Not Marcus, me." "Why me specifically?" "Because everyone else in this building already knows to do that," he said, and something in the honesty of the answer landed harder than a compliment would have. "You are the only person in this kitchen this week who does not yet understand what world she has walked into. I would rather correct that gap myself than have someone else explain it to you badly." She held his gaze a beat longer than the conversation strictly required, long enough to notice the particular color of his eyes, a brown so dark it read almost black, except where the kitchen's fluorescent light caught them directly, long enough that something warm and unwise unfurled low in her stomach before she made herself look back down at the chocolate. "Thank you," she said, "for telling me the truth instead of pretending everything here is ordinary." "I do not pretend well," Vincent said. "It has never been useful to me." He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway the way he had the first day she met him, a man deciding whether to say one more thing. "The sfogliatelle you made at that wedding. I have not been able to stop thinking about the filling. What was in it?" "Cream, orange zest, a little bit of ricotta," she said, surprised into something almost like a laugh. "It's not a secret. Anyone could ask." "No one else has thought to ask," Vincent said, and left before she could decide what to make of that. That night, walking to the subway after a 14-hour day, Hannah noticed the same dark sedan Vincent had mentioned parked half a block from the restaurant, engine idling, windows tinted dark enough that she could not make out a driver. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself that twice more before she reached the station, and did not entirely believe herself either time. The threat introduced itself properly 3 nights later, when Hannah stayed late to finish testing a hazelnut tort and found the kitchen's back exit propped open by a brick that had not been there an hour before. She noticed it the way she noticed everything in a kitchen, with the automatic precision of someone whose job depended on tracking small details, and felt the particular chill of understanding that something in this building had changed since she had last walked through it. She should have called for Marcus immediately. She understood that even as she chose, instead, to step toward the propped door herself, curiosity and stubbornness overriding the good sense that told her to retreat. The alley behind Marchetti's was narrow and poorly lit, and the man standing in it was not one of the restaurant's staff, dressed in a jacket too thin for the cold, his attention fixed on a phone in his hand until the sound of her footsteps made him look up. Something about the speed with which his expression shifted from surprise to calculation told her immediately that he was not lost. "You're not supposed to be back here," Hannah said, and heard the steadiness in her own voice with some distant surprise, given how unsteady she felt underneath it. "Neither are you, sweetheart." He pocketed the phone slowly, and she caught, in the movement, the outline of something at his waistband that made her stomach drop. "You work for Marchetti. I've seen you come and go all week. Tell me something. Does he keep the shipment records in this kitchen or in the office upstairs?" Hannah understood, with a clarity that felt almost like relief despite the danger of it, that this man believed her to be someone she was not, some low-level employee who might know more than she did, or worse, someone he intended to use to get to Vincent directly. She also understood that the propped door behind her was her only advantage in this conversation, and that the moment she turned to run for it, she would be turning her back on a man with a gun at his waistband. "I make desserts," she said instead, keeping her voice flat, unimpressed, the exact tone she had used on customers who tried to talk her down on wedding cake prices. "I don't know anything about shipments. I've never even seen the upstairs office." "That's disappointing," the man said, and took a step closer, close enough that she could smell cigarettes and something sour beneath it. "Because I really do need that information, and I'm running out of patience for the people in this building who claim not to have it." She did the only thing she could think to do, which was reach behind her without looking, find the metal trash can lid stacked against the wall from the earlier delivery, and swing it hard into the side of his head the instant he closed the last of the distance between them. He staggered, cursing, and she did not wait to see whether he recovered his balance before she was through the propped door and slamming it shut behind her, throwing the interior bolt with hands that had finally, belatedly, started to shake. "Marcus!" Her voice tore through the kitchen loud enough that two line cooks dropped what they were holding. "There's a man in the alley. He had a gun. He was asking about shipment records." What happened next happened fast. Marcus and two other men moving toward the back exit with a speed and coordination that told her, more clearly than anything Vincent had said all week, exactly what kind of organization she had walked into, and Vincent himself appearing from the direction of the office at a speed that abandoned every trace of his usual careful stillness. "Are you hurt?" he said, reaching her before Marcus had even confirmed the alley was clear, his hands finding her shoulders with a grip that was not gentle so much as thorough, checking for injury with the efficiency of a man who had done this before. "I'm fine. I hit him with a trash can lid and locked the door." Her voice was steadier than her hands. "He wanted to know where you keep shipment records. He thought I might know." Something moved across Vincent's face that she had not seen from him before, a fury so controlled it was almost worse than shouting would have been, banked and precise and entirely focused. "He should not have known you work here at all," he said, quiet, dangerous. Someone told him. That is not a coincidence I am willing to accept. Marcus returned 20 minutes later to report that the man had fled the alley before they could reach him, taking whatever information he had gathered with him and leaving nothing behind but a cracked phone screen and a set of tire tracks that led nowhere useful. Vincent had not let go of Hannah's shoulder the entire time Marcus delivered the report, and she found she did not particularly want him to. "You should go home," Vincent said, once the kitchen had emptied and it was only the two of them left among steel counters and the cooling scent of hazelnut. "This should never have touched you. I will find someone else to finish the dinner. You should not have to work somewhere that put a gun near you." "I'm not quitting," Hannah said, more forcefully than she intended, surprising them both. "I hit a man with a trash can lid 20 minutes ago, and I am still standing here telling you I want to finish this job. That should tell you something." It tells me you are either braver than anyone I have hired in years, or you do not fully understand what you just walked into, Vincent said, and something in his voice had gone rough in a way she had not heard from him before, stripped of its usual careful control. That man was sent by someone. I do not yet know who, but I intend to find out. And until I do, this restaurant is not safe the way it was safe a week ago. Then tell me what I'm actually in the middle of, Hannah said. You've been vague with me since the bakery. I understand you don't owe me your whole life story, but I just hit a stranger with a trash can lid because he thought I knew where you keep shipment records. I think I've earned an honest answer. Vincent studied her for a long moment, and she watched him make the same calculation she had watched him make in the kitchen days earlier, deciding how much truth a person could handle, except this time something in his expression suggested the answer mattered to him more than it had before. My family does not only own restaurants, he said finally. We control territory in this city that other families would like to take from us. There is a man named Salvatore Greco who has wanted what I have for longer than I have been the one holding it. 3 months ago, one of my own men began feeding him information. I have not yet found who. The man in the alley tonight was almost certainly one of Greco's, sent to find weaknesses in this building before he moves against me directly. He said it flatly, without drama, the way he seemed to say everything that mattered most. The dinner in 6 days is not simply tradition. It is where I intend to show every family in this city that my position is not weakening, whatever Greco believes. If that dinner fails, if it is disrupted, it will be read as proof that I am vulnerable. Men like Greco only respect strength. The moment they smell weakness, they move. So the dessert I'm making isn't just dessert, Hannah said slowly. It's part of the message. Everything at that dinner is part of the message, Vincent said. The wine, the seating, the music, the food. All of it says, without a single word being spoken, that nothing has changed and nothing will. He looked at her for a long moment, something unguarded moving behind his careful eyes. I should have told you all of this before I asked you to work here. I did not, because I told myself it would frighten you away, and I wanted you in this kitchen more than I was willing to admit. Why? Hannah asked, quiet now, the question carrying more weight than the single word should have held. Because you are the only person who has walked into my life this month and treated me like a man who needed a favor answered, instead of a man who needed to be managed or feared, Vincent said. That is a rare thing to be given in my world. I did not want to lose it by telling you the truth too soon. She reached out, without entirely deciding to, and set her flour-dusted hand over his on the steel counter between them, and felt him go very still, the particular stillness of a man unused to being touched without calculation behind it. I'm not scared away, she said. I'm still here. Tell me what you need me to do. The days that followed moved differently between them, the careful distance Vincent had maintained since the coffee shop, giving way to something neither of them named directly, but both of them felt. A shift measured in small things. He began arriving in the kitchen earlier, staying later, finding reasons to taste each new component of the dessert menu that required him to stand closer to her than any professional obligation demanded. She began noticing the particular way he said her name, slower than he said anyone else's, like he was choosing to spend more time on it than the word strictly required. Marcus, for his part, had doubled security around the restaurant without being asked twice, and Hannah found herself walking to and from the subway flanked at a discreet distance by a man she had never officially met, an arrangement Vincent had put in place after the alley without informing her directly, which she discovered only when she confronted him about it and watched him decide, again, not to apologize for something he did not consider a mistake. You had someone follow me home, she said, arms crossed, standing in the kitchen doorway 3 days before the dinner. I had someone ensure you got home safely, Vincent corrected. There is a difference. Not one I asked for. No, he agreed, but one I am not willing to negotiate on, given what happened in that alley. He set down the knife he had been using to test a chocolate garnish and looked at her directly, all pretense of casual conversation dropping away. Greco's man knew you worked here within a week of you starting. That tells me whoever is feeding him information is watching this kitchen closely. I will not risk you becoming collateral in something that has nothing to do with you, simply because I did not take the threat seriously enough. It has something to do with me now, Hannah said. I'm not separate from this anymore, Vincent. I hit a man with a trash can lid. I've been walking home with a bodyguard I didn't know I had. You don't get to decide I'm outside this just because it would be more convenient for your conscience. Something in his expression cracked open at that, some careful architecture giving way that she had watched him maintain flawlessly since the day they met. I do not know how to have both things, he said, quiet, honest in a way that felt costly for him to be. I do not know how to keep you close and keep you safe at the same time. I have never had to hold both before. Every time I have cared about someone in this life, it has cost them everything. Tell me, Hannah said, softer now, understanding she had reached the edge of something he did not offer easily. My brother, Vincent said, and his voice had gone flat in the particular way she now recognized as him working hard to keep it steady. Anthony. He was not made for this life the way I was. He wanted out, wanted a normal name and a normal job and none of what our father built. I told him I would protect him either way, that he did not have to choose between family and safety. I was wrong. Greco's people found him 3 years ago, used him to send me a message about territory I would not concede. I was 20 minutes too late to stop it. He looked at her then, something raw and unguarded in his dark eyes. I have not let anyone close enough since then to matter, because the last time someone mattered to me, it cost him his life. I do not know how to want you the way I have started wanting you, without that fear sitting underneath every single day. The kitchen had gone very quiet around them, the distant clatter of prep work fading into background noise neither of them registered. Hannah crossed the small distance between them and took his hand, the one still resting near the abandoned knife, and felt him grip back with a force that told her exactly how much the admission had cost him. You don't get to decide alone what risk I'm willing to take, she said. I decided that the night I hit a stranger with a trash can lid instead of running. I'm not asking you to protect me from this. I'm asking you to let me stand in it with you. Vincent's other hand came up slowly, tracing along her jaw with a gentleness that felt like the direct opposite of everything controlled and lethal she had learned he was capable of being. And for a long moment, neither of them spoke, the space between them narrowing to something that felt, finally, inevitable. The kiss, when it finally came, was neither rushed nor careful, a release of everything that had been building since the moment he walked into a bakery and said her name like he already knew the shape of it. Hannah felt his hand slide from her jaw into her hair, felt the particular restraint in the way he held her, like a man who had spent so long controlling every part of his life that even this, even wanting something for himself, required a discipline she could feel in the tension of his shoulders beneath her palms. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, both of them breathing harder than the moment strictly required. This does not make anything safer, Vincent said, low, almost a warning against her mouth. I didn't ask for safer, Hannah said. I asked for honest. 2 days before the dinner, the danger stopped being abstract. Hannah arrived at the restaurant early, before the rest of the kitchen staff, and found Vincent already there, standing over a delivery crate that had arrived overnight, his face carved from something harder than his usual careful calm. What's wrong? She said, though she already suspected from the set of his shoulders that the answer would not be small. He turned the crate toward her without a word. Inside, nested in packing straw where the wine order should have been, was a single bottle with a label she did not recognize and a note tucked beneath it, the handwriting deliberate, almost elegant. She did not need to read Italian to understand the message in the image accompanying it, a photograph of the restaurant's front entrance, time-stamped, with a red circle drawn carefully around the door. "Greco's message," Vincent said. "He knows the dinner is in 2 days. He is telling me he could have walked through that door already if he wanted to. He wants me to spend the next 2 days wondering if he will." "That's not just a message about you," Hannah said slowly, reading the photograph again, the angle of it, the specific window it framed. "That's the kitchen entrance, the one I use every morning." Vincent's jaw tightened, and she watched something in him go very cold, very still. The particular stillness she now understood preceded violence rather than calm. "He knows about you," he said, "not simply that you work here. He knows which door you use, which means he has been watching you specifically, not only the restaurant." He looked at her, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw something that looked almost like fear behind his careful eyes. "I should send you away from this city until it is finished. I should have done it after the alley." "You could try," Hannah said, "but I want you to notice that every time you've offered to send me away, you haven't actually done it. I think some part of you already knows I'm not leaving." "I do not want you to be another Anthony," Vincent said, and the rawness in his voice stopped her breath. "I do not think I would survive it a second time." "Then let's make sure that's not the story," Hannah said, and set her hand flat against his chest, feeling his heartbeat hammering beneath her palm, despite every trace of outward calm he maintained. "You said this dinner is the moment Greco decides whether you're weak or not. Let's give him an answer he doesn't expect. I'm not hiding in an apartment somewhere waiting to hear if you're alive. I'm standing in that kitchen on the night of the dinner, and everyone in that room is going to see exactly how little you and I intend to be intimidated." Vincent looked at her for a long moment, something fierce and unguarded moving behind his eyes, and when he finally spoke, his voice had steadied into something that sounded, for the first time since the photograph had arrived, almost certain again. "If you are staying," he said, "then you are staying with protection that does not leave your side for a single moment between now and the last guest walking out that door. That is not a negotiation." "Fine," Hannah said, "but I'm still making dessert." The 2 days before the dinner passed in a blur of preparation and quiet, constant vigilance. Marcus and 2 additional men Hannah had not seen before, stationed at every entrance to the restaurant. Vincent himself walking the building twice a day with an attention to detail that told her exactly how seriously he took the threat, even when his voice, in front of his staff, remained perfectly level. Hannah threw herself into the dessert menu the way she had always thrown herself into work when the rest of her life felt unsteady, testing the hazelnut torte 3 more times until the texture was exactly what she wanted, refining the citrus tart's crust until it shattered at precisely the right pressure of a fork. She found in the discipline of pastry work a kind of steadiness that nothing else in that week could offer her, and she suspected Vincent understood that about her, because he never once interrupted her when she was deep in the work, only appeared afterward, when she surfaced, with coffee or a question about ingredients that felt, increasingly, like an excuse to stand near her. The night before the dinner, she found him on the restaurant's small back terrace after the kitchen had emptied, staring out at the city with a stillness that looked less like calm now and more like a man bracing for something. "You should be sleeping," she said, coming to stand beside him. "I do not sleep well before nights like this," Vincent admitted. "I have not since Anthony. Every important night in this life carries the same shape in my head, the wondering whether tomorrow costs me someone I cannot afford to lose." "You're not going to lose me," Hannah said, and meant it with a conviction that surprised her, given how new all of this still was. given how impossible her life had looked from the vantage point of a bakery counter only 2 weeks earlier. "I've decided that. You don't get a vote." Something almost like a laugh escaped him, rough and unpracticed, like a muscle he had not used in a long time. "You are the only person in my life who has ever spoken to me like my decisions are optional." "Someone should," Hannah said. "It's probably overdue." He turned to face her fully then, and in the low light of the terrace, his expression had dropped every careful wall she had watched him build and rebuild since the bakery, nothing controlled left in it at all. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "I need you to know that meeting you was not calculation. I told myself, walking into that bakery, that I was simply hiring a pastry chef. I have known since the moment you refused to get in my car that it was never only that." "I know," Hannah said softly. "I think I knew before you did." He kissed her then, slow and certain, none of the urgency of the kitchen 2 days earlier, something steadier underneath it, a promise rather than a release. When they broke apart, he rested his hand against her cheek, and for a long moment, neither of them needed to say anything at all, the city humming quietly beneath the terrace, tomorrow waiting for both of them, whether they were ready for it or not. The dinner began at 8 the following evening, the restaurant transformed with a formality Hannah had not seen in her weeks working there, long tables set with a precision that spoke to exactly how seriously this tradition was taken by everyone involved. She watched from the kitchen doorway as the guests arrived, men in dark suits with the same watchful stillness she had come to recognize in Vincent himself, a room full of people who had built their entire lives around never showing a weakness they had not chosen to show. Salvatore Greco arrived last, exactly as she suspected he would, a heavy-set man with silver at his temples and an easy, dangerous smile that reminded her instantly of the man in the alley, the same casual confidence of someone used to being feared rather than crossed. "Vincent," Greco said, clasping his hand with a warmth that did not reach his eyes. "I confess I wondered if you would still hold this dinner, given the circumstances." "What circumstances would those be?" Vincent said, his voice perfectly level, giving away absolutely nothing. "Come now," Greco's smile widened. "A man in your position, receiving certain messages this week? I only meant that I am relieved to see you have not let concern get the better of you." "I do not concern easily," Vincent said, and gestured him toward his seat with a courtesy that felt, to Hannah watching from the kitchen, like the most dangerous thing she had seen him do all week. The dinner proceeded through its early courses with the particular tension of a room full of people performing normalcy over something that was anything but. And Hannah stayed close to the kitchen, plating each dessert course herself, aware of Marcus positioned near the door with an attentiveness that had nothing casual left in it. It was during the third course that she noticed the man near the coat check who did not belong, a face she recognized instantly from the alley behind the restaurant, cleaned up now, wearing a suit that almost passed for one of Greco's own men. But his eyes kept finding the kitchen door in a way that told her, immediately, exactly what he was there for. She did not run to Vincent. She had learned, over the last 2 weeks, that alerting the room to a threat before understanding its full shape only handed the advantage to whoever had planned it. Instead, she caught Marcus's eye across the room with a look she hoped conveyed urgency without drawing attention, and inclined her head once toward the coat check. Marcus understood immediately, moving with the same economical precision she had watched Vincent use in the kitchen days earlier, intercepting the man near the coat check with a hand on his shoulder that looked, to anyone not paying close attention, like a friendly greeting between acquaintances. But the man was faster than Marcus expected, breaking free and reaching for something at his waistband, and the dining room dissolved into chaos in the space of a single heartbeat, chairs scraping back, several of Greco's own men rising with weapons already half drawn, the practiced choreography of men who had prepared for exactly this possibility, even at a dinner meant to project peace. Hannah did not freeze. She grabbed the tray of dessert plates nearest her, heavy porcelain stacked 3 high, and threw it directly into the path between the armed man and the head table where Vincent sat, the crash and scatter of shattering porcelain buying exactly the half-second of confusion Marcus needed to close the distance and disarm him fully, wrestling the gun free and driving him hard into the floor. The room went silent, except for the ragged breathing of a dozen dangerous men recalculating what had just happened. And Vincent was on his feet, already moving toward Hannah with an expression that had abandoned every trace of careful calm, checking her for injury with hands that were not quite steady. "I'm fine," she said, before he could ask. "He was watching the kitchen door the whole time. I told Marcus before he could get close enough to hurt anyone." Greco had risen from his seat as well, his easy smile gone entirely, replaced by something that looked almost like genuine alarm, a man watching his own carefully laid plan collapse in front of every important witness in the city. "I did not send him," Greco said quickly, too quickly, the words arriving before his composure had fully reassembled. "Vincent, you have to believe, I would never move against you at your own table, not with this many families watching." "I believe you did not send him tonight," Vincent said, and his voice had dropped into the register Hannah now recognized as the most dangerous thing about him: quiet, absolute, entirely certain. "I believe someone in your organization decided your patience with me had gone on long enough and acted without waiting for your permission."
"That is a problem for you to solve, Salvatore, and I suggest you solve it quickly, because the entire room just watched a woman with no training in this life stop what your people could not stop themselves." The rest of the dinner proceeded, remarkably, once Marcus had removed the intruder and the shattered porcelain had been swept away, every guest at that table understanding, without needing it spoken aloud, that whatever message Greco had intended to send with the photograph 2 days earlier had been answered decisively, not by violence, but by a room that had refused to break. Later, after the last guest had gone and the restaurant had fallen quiet, Vincent found Hannah in the kitchen scrubbing down the counters out of habit more than necessity, her hands finally shaking now that the danger had passed and there was room for the fear to catch up with her. "You could have been killed tonight," he said, gathering her hands in his to still them. "So could you," she said. "I decided a long time ago I wasn't going to just stand there when that happened." He drew her close, resting his forehead against hers the way he had on the terrace the night before, and for a long moment neither of them spoke, the adrenaline slowly draining out of the room and leaving something steadier in its place. "I have spent 3 years since Anthony believing I could not let anyone matter this much again," Vincent said quietly. "Tonight you threw a tray of dessert plates at an armed man to protect a room full of people who would have called you nothing more than the help a month ago. I do not know how to keep pretending you are not the most important thing in my life." "Then stop pretending," Hannah said. "I'm not asking you to be careful with me. I'm asking you to let me stand beside you the same way I did tonight." Vincent's hand came up to cradle her face, and this time when he kissed her, there was nothing careful left in it at all, only certainty, only the particular relief of 2 people who had survived something together and chosen, deliberately, not to let go of each other afterward. If this story kept you hooked from the first bell of that bakery door, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in that kitchen, and let me know where in the world you are listening from tonight. There is always another dangerous man waiting in the next story, and Vincent will not be the last one worth staying for.